Waitress exposes millionaire's bride at dinner. His unexpected decision changed everything. Jess wiped down the counter of the diner, the clatter of plates and glasses serving as a backdrop to her racing thoughts. Friday nights always drew a crowd, and tonight felt especially electric with the engagement dinner unfolding for Tom, the local millionaire. What a contrast, she thought as she grabbed a fresh pot of coffee. Wealthy, privileged people like Veronica didn't think twice about the struggles that defined her life. They never saw the bills piling up, the pressures to provide for Ethan, or the dreams of college slipping further away. In moments of distraction, Jess watched Veronica, drenched in confidence and designer fabrics, smirking as she bragged about her extravagant lifestyle. Jess felt a tightening in her gut. The unsolicited judgment in that laughter echoed her internal worries, amplifying the poison of self-doubt. Who was she? Just a waitress, fighting to make ends meet, while Veronica rattled off tales of exclusive parties and yacht getaways. There was no way Tom and his world could ever truly understand her. Before she could lose herself in bitterness, Jess moved to take orders, all the while fighting the urge to shrink into herself. Then, the disaster struck. A rush of movement, a momentary lapse in concentration, and the refreshing sparkle of lemonade cascaded down Veronica's pristine dress. Humiliation washed over Jess as laughter erupted from the table. "Look at the poor thing," Veronica cooed mockingly, "just a clumsy waitress." A wave of heat rushed to her cheeks. She felt trapped, her entire existence laid bare before a crowd that thrived on the misfortune of others. Desperation gripped her heart like a vice. Was there really no way out of this? She wanted to leave the moment, to vanish beneath the linoleum floor tiles. But just as the bitterness threatened to overwhelm her, she caught Tom's eye. "Veronica," he began, his voice slicing through the cacophony like a knife, "you have no idea who Jess is." It was an unexpected loyalty. Instead of cowering, something inside her flickered to life. A stirring hope, perhaps, or a reckless courage. He didn't see her as the clumsy waitress, but as someone worthy of respect. Just then, Jess battled the wave of gratitude rising in her chest against the doubts eating at her. Was Tom really standing up for her? Did he recognize the sacrifices she made for her brother, or the nights she spent awake, beating back ghosts of failure? She froze, heart racing as the pressure mounted. What if he had ulterior motives? A sudden rush of questions flooded her mind. What kind of man stands up against privilege? Shouldn't she just give in to the fear of further embarrassment? Before Jess could process anything, tension crackled in the air, thickening as she glanced at Veronica's face, shards of anger splintering across her features. Whispers quivered among the other guests, with eyes darting between Jess and Tom. Each lingering moment magnified her vulnerability. She loathed feeling so small, yet the way Tom was defending her made her feel seen, recognized. As she stood amidst the thrum of uncertainty, Jess faced her own reflection in that moment of chaos. Could she accept a hand reaching out, or would she retreat into the safety of a lowly existence? The diner buzzed with anticipation, and the weight of change pressed down on Jess, leaving her breathless. Could this one moment turn the tide and alter the course of her life forever? The diner fell momentarily silent following Tom's declaration, a hush enveloping Jess like a protective veil against the onslaught of laughter and ridicule. She felt a seismic shift within herself, a riptide of possibility pulling her towards the surface of her own insecurities. Could she navigate this whirlpool, or would she drown beneath it? Doubt still clawed at her, demanding to know if Tom's defense was mere pity or something more genuine. She made eye contact with him again, his expression unwavering. In that fleeting second, the chaos melted away. She no longer saw the diner's lighting flickering or the stares of judgment directed her way. Instead, Jess began to realize that this moment might be a catalyst for transformation. Gathering her strength, she straightened her spine and squared her shoulders. The waitress uniform felt heavier than usual, but it was just fabric, an external barrier not reflective of her capabilities. Internal dialogue shifted from self-criticism to self-affirmation. This was her chance to redefine her narrative. "Do you ever wonder why it's so easy for people like you to belittle others?" Jess's voice cut through the tension, surprisingly steady. She stood a little taller, emboldened. Veronica's irritation twisted deeper, darkening her features. "Excuse me," Veronica shot back, her tone iced over with disdain. "No, really. You flaunt your privilege like it's a badge of honor, while people like me just struggle to get by. Why not try to understand what drives someone's story instead of just making a mockery of it?" Jess pressed, the words spilling out with an increasing intensity. Veronica opened her mouth to retort, but Jess continued, fueled by a newfound conviction. Those around them, seated guests and patrons alike, were caught in a ripple of surprise. She tapped into the swirling emotions, accessing a depth of articulation she hadn't realized she possessed. Tom watched, admiration igniting his eyes as Jess faced the confrontation head-on. There was an undeniable shift within herself. Each word she spoke unfurled like petals from a constricted bud, revealing an unexpected resilience. As the humidity of tension thickened the air, she felt liberated, not in the triumph of humiliation, but in wielding her voice deliberately for the first time. Jess realized that standing her ground didn't simply mean defending herself. It unveiled her hidden strength, a component of her identity that had long been buried beneath layers of doubt and insecurity. She noticed the shifting expressions on her fellow diners' faces. Some mirrored shock, others began to nod in silent support. It was a revelation. Jess discovered that her fight wasn't just about claiming respect, but reimagining her worth in a world that often disregarded her. Finally, Jess turned to Tom, a quick glance betraying her vulnerability despite her bravado. "What now?" Tom stepped closer, a subtle smile curving his lips. "Now it's your turn to decide how far you want to go with this. You've changed the conversation tonight. Just imagine what you could accomplish if you embraced that voice more often." His words ignited a spark of ambition deep within her, a possibility she never dreamed to entertain. Could she really cultivate her own narrative, navigating this delicate dance between her current reality and her aspirations? At that moment, a light bulb flickered to life. What if she could harness this encouragement to transform not just her life, but also her situation? The looming decision pressed down like a weight, palpable in its enormity. The call of change resonated within, nagging at the edges of her self-doubt. Standing on the precipice of her own evolution, she pondered her next move, uncertain yet exhilarated. The weight of her ordinary life began to feel lighter, and an exhilarating tension pulsed in her veins, urging her to confront both Tom's intentions and the potential for realizing her dreams. As the last echoes of laughter dissolved into a contemplative silence, Jess could feel the stirrings of ambition coiling tightly within herself. Would she indeed step off the cliff and soar, or would she retreat back to the safe, dim corners of her diner existence? With the fateful decision looming ahead, Jess stood willing to embark on her next chapter, the uncertainty whispering promises of growth mingling with the fear of failure. The moment had come to take a leap. What daring path would unfold before her? The diner was abuzz once more, but Jess sensed a palpable shift in the air. Instead of laughter, there was curiosity, the kind that birthed new opportunities rather than scorn. She could feel the weight of her words hanging heavy on the atmosphere, morphing her sense of reality. Tom's smile had sent ripples through the room, yet it was the warmth of his belief that flickered in her chest, igniting a deep drive for self-discovery rather than fear. Gazing down at her uniform, she caught glimpses of the childhood dreams that had long been buried. What had those dreams even been? They had been too far back in her memory, smothered beneath the mundanity of orders, late-night shifts and empty conversations. And now, standing at the crossroads of her life, Jess realized she had some choices to make. "Let's get out of here," she said without a second thought, surprising even herself with the authority in her voice. Tom raised an eyebrow, seemingly impressed. As they stepped into the warm, sticky ambience of the summer night, she felt the weight of her past begin to dissipate, as if the air outside was purging her of self-imposed chains. "Where to?" Tom asked as they walked, his stride effortlessly matching hers. "I don't know, but something has to change," Jess answered, her voice softer yet filled with determination. She craved movement, not just physical, but a shift that echoed into her core. This wasn't merely an escape. It was about reconfiguring her identity. Decision mingled with instinct. As they strolled past the local shops, illuminated neon signs reflected her ambivalence, and Jess felt the gentle burn of latent ambition reaching out to her. What if she transformed her life by embracing her voice? Just standing there protesting had felt powerful, but now she needed to explore those words further, beyond this moment, beyond this diner. "Why did you stand up for yourself like that?" Tom asked suddenly, his gaze steady. "I mean, most wouldn't." For a moment Jess hesitated. "I don't know, but I felt like I had to." That was only half the truth. Something about his steadfastness had stoked a fire inside her, reshaping her thoughts as she confronted not only others, but her own perceptions of worth. "Well, that's something to hold on to," he replied thoughtfully, his voice rich with appreciation. "Fortitude is rare." This was new. Acceptance, not of who she had been, but of who she could be. As they reached a small park, a place bubbling with life yet somehow removed from her ordinary world, she felt compelled to share her feelings, unearthing truths hidden beneath layers of shame and fear. "I've spent so much time feeling invisible. Do you ever feel that way?" His pause while he contemplated felt heavy. "We all do at some point. It's how we respond that matters," he affirmed, and something in his eyes glimmered, a potential partnership, perhaps. Flashes of excitement coursed through her veins. "What if I wanted to start speaking, sharing stories of my life, considering writing?" "Absolutely. Start small, gather experiences, share your journey." Encouraged by his words, she envisioned herself unearthing stories long forgotten, confronting injustices she had endured. Wouldn't that be exhilarating? Yet shadows loomed in the periphery of her shared exhilaration. Would she have the strength to follow through? The thought of failing, of being silenced again, sent a chill through her, but the prospect of sharing her truth beckoned with a seductive allure. "I'm terrified," she whispered, vulnerability now her ally. "Good. Fear is just a stepping stone," he reassured, his smile confidence wrapped in encouragement. In that moment, Jess recognized the potential for something more than just running away from her struggles. She could channel her energy into a movement, a personal revolution that could mend not just her life, but others as well. With renewed vigor, she thought about the small coffee shop where locals shared their works, a sanctuary for budding writers. Her heart raced. Was she ready to take that leap? What would it feel like to claim her narrative and rewrite her story? Would she find the strength to speak her truth before those who'd once dismissed her? As they walked on, Jess couldn't help but glance back towards the diner, her past, and step forward towards something entirely new, an invitation to embrace the unknown, with the kind of courage that had been dormant for too long. The night was still young, and with each step the promise of becoming, of truly discovering her voice, felt more tangible than ever. What awaited when she finally unveiled her story? The rush of impending revelation thrummed through her veins. The cool breeze wrapped around Jess as she and Tom ambled through the park, the soft rustling of leaves providing a soothing backdrop to her racing thoughts. She was awake, illuminated by the prospect of bearing her soul through her stories, a prospect that had once seemed not just daunting but impossible. Now the allure of sharing her experiences pulsated within her, filling the gaps of her self-doubt with something far more vibrant: purpose. "Have you ever considered writing?" she asked suddenly, an idea catching in her throat like a whisper waiting to escape. "I mean, what do you do? Where do you even start?" Tom chuckled lightly, the sound wrapping around her like a warm blanket. "I mostly just jot down what comes to mind. Simple thoughts, moments that intrigue me. But you seem ready to dig deeper. Why not start with that feeling you felt back in the diner?" The suggestion lingered in the air like a scent she couldn't identify, but desperately wanted to capture. What had that feeling been? It had been sheer defiance against the mundane, the suffocating cloak of invisibility that always threatened to smother her. Maybe if she could write about that, she could unravel the story starting from where she felt most constricted. "Maybe I write about being a waitress. There's so much in that," Jess mused, her lips curling into a smile. "All the regulars, the late-night conversations, the struggles." "Exactly," Tom encouraged. "Think of your perspective. It's unique. You have insights that no one else does. Tap into those experiences. What have you seen? What have you felt? The weight of his words anchored her, forcing her to confront years of memories that had paraded through her mind but never found a home on paper. She felt the chill of doubt nipping at her enthusiasm. What if those memories weren't worth expressing? What if nobody cared? Still, it's terrifying, she admitted, her excitement tempered with fear. What if my truth is too raw? What if I can't capture it the way it deserves? Tom's expression shifted, more contemplative. The rawness is what gives it power. Don't sanitize your truth. It's your story. Own it. Trust that your voice will resonate more than you think. People connect with authenticity. Jess swallowed hard, the vulnerability opening a floodgate of emotions within her. It was easy to translate her fears into excuses, to revert to the safety of mundane conversations and predictable exchanges. But allowing those voices to dim her ambition felt wrong. So, where do I start? Start by writing it down. Even if it's messy, just let the words flow. Your first draft doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to exist. As they strolled along the path, Jess mulled over those thoughts, the tendrils of her early ambitions weaving in and out of her consciousness. The coffee shop loomed nearby, a beacon calling her. Could she really dive into this project? Would the same place, where anonymity reigned, become a cradle for her truth? The decision began to solidify in her mind. She'd jot down her thoughts, perhaps even draft an outline for her stories. But what if doing this exposed bits of her inner life she wasn't quite ready to share? The nagging apprehension tried to claw its way back, but she fed it with the promise of transformation. "Let's visit that coffee shop," she suggested, her voice firm with newfound courage. "What do you think? Maybe I can start writing there." Tom smiled broadly, and she felt it as a surge of energy. "Absolutely, let's do it. I'll join you if that helps." With a quickened pace, Jess felt exhilaration and trepidation collide in her chest. The coffee shop appeared in sight, a modest window framed with the inviting glow of soft lights. The threshold between safety and vulnerability beckoned. Would she find the strength to break through her barriers and put her heart into words? As they stepped inside, Jess's heart raced, anticipation a double-edged sword. A deep breath grounded her resolve. Each moment spent here could carve the beginnings of a narrative that spoke to her essence, but buried beneath the excitement remained the silent fear of rejection, that perhaps this wasn't the realm where she belonged. Yet she had stepped away from the diner, away from the shadows of self-doubt. In that very moment she felt the weight of potential collide with the urgency of self-exploration. What if the act of writing became a confrontation not just with her past, but also with her very self? The atmosphere buzzed with the scent of coffee and possibility, leaving her breathless with excitement. Jess spotted a corner table and claimed it, grounding herself against the wave of anxiety that threatened to pitch her doubtfully back. She opened her notebook, the blank pages urging her on. But the very act of putting a pen to paper felt monumental. Would what flowed from her heart be enough? And just as she poised her pen above the page, a figure entered the shop, the sight of someone from her past who could unravel the very foundation she was trying to build. The unexpected confrontation sent her heart into a tumult. Could she truly embrace her voice now? The tension rose sharply, and she had to confront this past part of herself head-on. What lay ahead wasn't merely an act of writing, it would be an exploration of her emerging identity. The moment Jess spotted him, her breath caught in her throat. Jake, her former boyfriend, was standing just a few feet away, his back turned toward her as he ordered a coffee. Memories flooded her mind like a tidal wave. The laughter, the heartbreak, the gut-wrenching goodbyes. She hadn't expected to see him here, of all places. In that instant, her resolve to write about her experiences felt precarious, as if every word she had hoped to put on paper could shatter into a million pieces. Tom, oblivious to her internal struggle, remained focused on the menu board. Jess felt herself teeter on the brink of retreating. She wanted to gather her belongings and flee, to hide in the safety of her own uncertainty. But something deeper stirred inside her. Wasn't this exactly the confrontation she had feared but needed? The very essence of her story was laced with moments just like this, the unexpected encounters that prompted reflection and growth. She forced her eyes to focus on the notebook, tapping the pen against the page, a rhythm that matched her racing heart. What was it that tied her to the past? It wasn't just Jake. It was the entire life she had conjured in her mind. The doubts that had previously loomed so large began to shrink against this fresh perspective. It was time to reclaim her narrative. Summoning her courage, Jess turned toward Tom. What if I wrote about the moments that made me hide? The times that shaped the person I am? Her voice wavered, but the thought of the blank page simmered with potential. Tom's eyes lit up. Exactly. What have you been avoiding? People connect with vulnerability, Jess. Show them what's real. Appeased by his encouragement, Jess looked back at Jake, who stood there laughing with the barista. His smile was disarming, a visceral reminder of what could have been, but this feeling was not an anchor. It was a drifting current ripe for exploration. Could she weave her experiences with him into her writing without losing herself? Internal dialogue wrestled for dominance. She wouldn't be reduced to memories. Instead, she could derive lessons from them. It dawned on her. Her fears were not silencing her, they were guiding her. Uninterrupted, she scribbled notes, furiously capturing flashes of their history, as well as the nuances of her emotions. "Can we sit somewhere else?" Jess asked Tom, peering toward Jake once more. "I think I need a change of scenery." It wasn't just about avoiding confrontation. It felt vital to create space for her thoughts, a physical separation from the past as she thrust herself into the present. "Sure," he said, and they moved to a quieter table in the back where the noise dulled and the world beyond blurred. Jess could breathe again, surrounded by strangers yet feeling isolated. It was the perfect setup for her exploration. Still clutching her pen, she returned to the blank page, staring at it, as if the ink itself had stories waiting to emerge. The memories of being a waitress twirled in her head, infused with the experiences of loss and triumph that shaped her. How many conversations had she borne witness to at the diner? Each reflected a different facet of life, the tragic, the mundane, and the heartening. Yet Jake loomed large in the back of her mind. What ended them should have suffocated her ambition, but now it became fuel. She wanted to understand how love had once felt intoxicating, yet painfully limiting. How could she reveal those truths on paper? She needed to channel that anger into crafting something beautiful and real. As words began to flow, Jess nestled deeper into her creative space. She transcribed memories onto the page, layering her experiences with insights that stemmed from her time as a waitress, the lessons in humanity learned through the lenses of others' stories. Each line unveiled a little more about herself, drawing connections between her past and her ambitions for the future. Then, just as she began to find her rhythm, she caught sight of Jake getting up and moving toward her. The pulse of uncertainty crashed against the burgeoning clarity in her heart. Was she ready for this? A confrontation was inevitable. She had just begun to sketch her narrative, and now a sudden disruption stood in her way. And as he approached, a whirlpool of emotions churned within her, urging her to confront not only the past but the boundaries of her creativity. Would the encounter bolster her writing, or send her spiraling back into doubt? The answer loomed larger than the moment, igniting her determination to face whatever awaited her. "Jess," he started, and she braced herself for a dialogue that would undoubtedly shape her story. It wasn't just about the words on the page anymore. It was about returning control of her narrative and her identity. The moment had arrived for her to confront the truth, both his and her own. "Jess," Jake said, the familiarity in his voice a jagged edge against her resolve. She looked up, meeting his gaze with an intensity she hadn't expected to muster. The room around them faded slightly, her focus narrowing to just him and her. For a split second, she felt a swirl of emotions, anger, nostalgia, but also a flicker of recognition. This was the man she once loved, the one who had been her muse and her tormentor. She felt a push and pull inside her, the instinct to flee versus the desire to stand her ground. "How have you been?" Jake asked, and his smile was almost disarming. It was the same smile she remembered, but now it felt like an echo from a life that no longer belonged to her. Jess could almost hear Tom's encouraging words in her head. Show them what's real. This time, she decided, she wouldn't allow Jake's presence to undermine her journey. She had a chance to reclaim her narrative, to set the boundaries she had long neglected. "I've been working on some writing," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's actually about the things that hold us back, how past relationships shape who we become." The words tasted raw on her tongue, a reflection of her inner turmoil, but the thrill of sharing this insight coursed through her. "Writing? Wow, I knew you were always good at putting your thoughts down," Jake replied, leaning against the table. She noticed how nonchalantly he spoke, as if they hadn't spent years apart, each wave of affection morphing into something heavier with time. "What's been your biggest inspiration?" His question was innocent, perhaps, but it felt like a direct challenge. Jess took a breath, steadying herself. "I think facing fears is a major theme. You know, confronting the things that make us hesitate. Like confronting you right now." The words hung in the air, charged with an energy that was both terrifying and liberating. For a moment, surprise flickered across Jake's features, as if her candor had taken him off guard. "I didn't think you'd feel that way about me?" His tone had shifted, turning more serious. "We had good times, didn't we?" Jess met his gaze, feeling the weight of his question. Good times also came with heartache, with lessons that had scarred her deeply. "Some were good, but I also learned a lot about what I need and deserve. I can't ignore that anymore." Each declaration felt like peeling back layers of her own skin, exposing yet empowering. Jake's expression faltered. Realization crossed his face. "I guess I've been stubborn about accepting my part in all of that," he admitted. "It's hard to face your mistakes." The admission struck her deeply. Vulnerability was rarely something she had seen in him, and now that she did, it tested her resolve once more. What would come next if she allowed this dialogue to reshape the boundaries they had erected? But this couldn't just be about him. It had to be about her triumph. She had spent too long letting her past dictate her present. "I understand that it's difficult, but we both need to recognize our parts. That's the only way we grow." Silence filled the space between them, dense with unspoken thoughts and memories. As she looked into his eyes, she felt the boundaries of her narrative expand. Could they both forge a new understanding? One that acknowledged their past, without being shackled by it? Jake leaned in slightly, his expression softer now. "I'm hoping I can make a new start too." His words opened a door she hadn't expected to consider. What did that mean for her? Did she really want to navigate this complex path with him again, potentially risking her newfound sense of self? The uncertainty forced her to reconsider her ambitions. She had been ready to pour her heart and soul into her writing about the past, but standing here, she realized it could also mean rewriting parts of her story now. Would she allow him back in, or view this as another source of inspiration for her narrative? "Maybe this dialogue can also become part of it," she suggested cautiously. "But it has to be on my terms." Jake nodded, contemplative. "That's fair. I don't want to disrupt your process. I just wanted you to know I'm here now, if you're willing." The air tingled with tension, a swirling vortex of potential. Jess could sense her past colliding with her future, and it urged her to make a choice, one that would shape not only her writing but also her heart. There was something in his tone that made her consider possibilities she had long dismissed. A new chapter could unfold, but at what cost? And just as the conversation hung in the balance, an unexpected visitor interrupted. Someone from her past she had never anticipated seeing. Jess's heart raced as she weighed the implications of this abrupt intrusion on her evolving narrative. Would it send her spiraling back into confusion, or would it affirm her newfound strength? Jess took a step back, her heart thundering in her chest. The intrusion felt like a thunderclap in an otherwise charged moment. She turned her head instinctively, half expecting someone familiar. Yet the figure that entered was both surprising and unsettling. It was Lila. Once Jess's closest friend, Lila's sudden reappearance crashed into her life like an unexpected tidal wave, bringing with it a mix of emotions and uncertainties. The tension between Jake and Jess had been palpable, but now a new layer of complexity entered the fray, one she hadn't anticipated. "Hey, Jess, I didn't know you'd be here," Lila called, enthusiasm tinged with something deeper. Perhaps guilt, perhaps nostalgia. Jess had distanced herself from Lila when she had chosen to align with Jake in the aftermath of their relationship. That fracture had festered between them, and now Lila's brightness felt like exposure to a harsh light. "Oh, Lila," Jess managed, her voice caught between surprise and tension. Seeing her stirred memories of shared secrets and insecurities, tugging at feelings she had tried to bury. She quickly glanced at Jake. The shift in his demeanor mirrored her own. "Small world, huh?" Lila's chipper tone belied the heaviness that settled in Jess's stomach. "What are you two talking about?" Jake, ever the charmer, eased his posture, attempting to cloak the awkwardness. "Just catching up, exploring some past themes," he said, his eyes flickering toward Jess, searching for her cues, even as the layered conversations wove together messily. "It's kind of like a therapy session, isn't it?" Lila laughed, but Jess could sense her unease beneath the surface. Lila had been a supportive anchor during her tumultuous breakup, but knowing she once stood by Jake's side made the present tense, almost suffocating. For a moment, Jess felt suspended in time, two pivotal people from her past converging on a single moment. What was it they could teach her now? Would she allow their shared histories to define her? "Actually, it's more about confronting unresolved feelings," Jess replied, summoning the steadiness she had found earlier. The words tasted new and assertive in her mouth. "I've been focusing on what holds me back. A lot of it stems from choices made in the past. The choice to avoid conflict, to shield herself, often left her feeling small all along." Lila seemed to absorb this, and for a fleeting second their eyes connected. A bridge of understanding formed. But then, Lila's instinctual competitiveness flared. "You mean the choices we all make, right? But Jess, maybe it's time to move on. You did your best to navigate that storm with Jake." The comment ignited a spark in Jess. Move on? That's what she was trying to do, and yet it was this very moment, caught up in layers of tangled history, that pushed her back against the walls she had worked hard to build. Moving on doesn't always mean forgetting, Lila. It also means recognizing what still resonates and learning how to evolve from it, Jess replied, her determination intermingling with rising anger. In that instant, Jess felt the full weight of her ongoing transformation, the understanding that her journey wasn't just about healing, but asserting her rights to voice her struggles. Every choice she had made was part of the foundation upon which she stood, meant to strengthen rather than scare her. "Well said," Jake interjected, his voice smooth with encouragement, but Jess heard something else beneath it. Was it camaraderie or a signal of interest ignited once more? She realized then that she could reinterpret his enthusiasm, not as a step back into old patterns, but as an acknowledgment of her progress. As Jess battled the maelstrom of confusion, Lila leaned in, a conspiratorial grin creeping onto her face. "What's next for you then? Writing about the messy bits of relationships, or are you going to allow these previous ties to weave more into your current narrative?" Jess felt her resolve shifting yet again. Lila's presence was both a comforting reminder of her past and a phantom of her insecurities. But perhaps here lay an opportunity, a challenge to define what her narrative would be moving forward. "I want to turn those messy bits into something that serves me. It's time for me to decide what I want." Jess's voice rang with new certainty, her eyes locking onto Lila's. This was about her trajectory now, not the ghost of relationships past. Jake's smile widened, but Jess was no longer looking at him for validation. She felt grounded, even amid turbulent emotions, and just as she was about to continue, her cell phone buzzed in her pocket. Its importance echoed in her mind, a message from Tom, perhaps, or something more pressing. Jess hesitated, torn between the unfolding drama in front of her and the promise of a new revelation beyond her control. But as she pulled out her phone, she caught the hesitant expressions on both Lila and Jake's faces, their intrigue morphing into anxiety. Was she ready for whatever news awaited? Did it hold the potential to upend her narrative anew, or would it serve as a fulcrum for her next leap forward? "Just give me a second," Jess said, feeling the weight of all eyes on her, compelling her to decide once and for all how she would shape this defining moment in her journey. Would the message reveal clarity, or would it pull her deeper into confusion and doubt? Jess glanced at her phone, the screen lighting up with a message that seemed to pulse with urgency, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere encasing her. For a split second, the world around her faded, leaving only the tantalizing mystery of what lay within that notification. It could be an opportunity, a lifeline, or a signal to retreat. "Take your time," Jake said, though his voice was laced with an undercurrent of expectation, as if this moment could reshape their connection entirely. Lila's expression mirrored that anticipation, but was tinged with apprehension. This unfolding situation held a gravity that neither of them could fully articulate. Jess could feel both of their interests pressing against her like a weight, compelling her to move in one direction or another. Inhaling deeply, she opened the message. Her heart raced as she read the brief, cryptic words from Tom. "Can we talk? Important." The message was succinct, but loaded with implications. Jess's mind danced through possibilities. Was it about their previous project? Or perhaps he wanted to discuss her writing aspirations. As she ruminated on these scenarios, she felt the allure of the unknown beckoning her, a whisper of what could lie ahead. "Who is it?" Lila's voice cut through Jess's thoughts, the casualness attempting to cloak a deeper curiosity. Was Lila trying to pin Jess down, to measure the weight of a decision she hadn't yet grasped? Jess could sense the probing nature of the question, and in that moment, flashing across her mental landscape, were the choices that had shaped her life thus far. "Just someone who wants to connect," Jess replied, her voice steady. With each word, she found her conviction growing. This was not merely a message about their shared past, but potentially an avenue toward her future, one that required her deliberate maneuvering. Jake raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping into his expression. "You sure that's all it is?" There was a challenge in his tone, a subtle invitation to revisit old wounds. Jess felt a surge of defiance. "Yes, Jake, I'm sure. It's about how I choose to move forward." She closed her phone with a snap, making the decision for herself, not allowing the gravitational pull of their past to sway her anymore. Today, she would dictate her path. The atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension hanging in the air. It felt like she had crossed some invisible threshold. Her confrontations with both Lila and Jake were not just trials. They were mirrors reflecting the choices that brought her here and the person she was becoming. Lila, no longer the buoyant friend from Jess's memory, appeared more vulnerable now, her posture softening. "I get it, Jess. I mean, we're all figuring this out, right?" There was sincerity in her voice, a fragile thread of connection. As that glimmer of honesty passed between them, Jess recognized a space for dialogue, one she had been hesitant to venture into. "Yes, we are," she conceded. "But I also want to see what I can create on my own. That has to start by being honest with myself." "Honesty is key," Jake said, an undertone of admiration slipping into his demeanor. It was unsettling yet invigorating, a tether to the past laced with a promise of growth. Was it possible that their shared history, however volatile, could spark a new beginning? Jess felt the weight of her decision blossom within her. The tremors of doubt often steering her ship began to dissipate. She had spent too long allowing others to dictate her emotions and narrative, substituting her self-identity for others' expectations. Suddenly she understood. The message was not merely a communication point, but a signal of empowerment. She envisioned walking away, not as an act of avoidance, but of reclamation, towards something greater, a project of her own making and a vital conversation with Tom that could turn her professional trajectory in a new direction. "Ladies," Jess began, standing a fraction taller, "I need to take this chance for myself. You both have your paths, and I'm starting to see mine for once. I truly appreciate your support, but it's time I move forward without looking back." Jake and Lila exchanged glances. There was shock, apprehension, perhaps even a hint of admiration. "What's next for you?" Lila finally asked, breaking the silence, her voice softer, almost reverential. "I don't know yet," Jess admitted, "but whatever it is, it has to be for me. I owe it to myself to explore my options. Clarity is just ahead. I can feel it." Before she could falter, she looked down at her phone, once more tempted by the message. In that brief moment, her dedication became clear. Jess felt a spark of purpose ignite within her, a beacon guiding her toward the unknown and undeniable potential of who she might become. As she turned to leave, stepping confidently away from the familiar faces in pursuit of what lay beyond. A new buzz danced in the air. The message might just open a door to a revelation she hadn't prepared for, and with it, the foundations of her identity could shift once again. Would this chance redefine her narrative completely, or was it just another fork in her ongoing journey of self-discovery? As Jess stepped outside, the brisk air filled her lungs, invigorating her spirit. It was a sensation she hadn't experienced in months, a tangible thrill of freedom blended with apprehension. The weight of Jake and Lila's expectations had been lifted, allowing her to navigate this new terrain unfettered. She glanced back, half expecting a last-minute plea for her to reconsider, but the familiar faces remained silent, absorbed in their own realities. She pulled out her phone again, her fingers hovering hesitantly over the screen. Every fiber of her being sensed that this conversation with Tom was pivotal. As she drove to meet him, flashes of doubt seared through her once more. What if this was just another dead end? What if Tom wanted to rehash past mistakes? Deep breaths surged within her, reminding her of her resolve. This time was different. She was fighting for herself. Arriving at a quaint cafe tucked away from bustling streets, Jess spotted Tom at a corner table, his brow furrowed in thought as he glanced up to catch her approach. His expression quickly morphed into a welcoming smile, but Jess couldn't ignore the tension coursing between them. The air around her was electric and charged, a mix of hope and anxiety. "Hey, Jess," he said, motioning her to sit. "Thanks for coming." His voice was layered with sincerity, but behind those words lay unspoken truths that begged for illumination. "I was surprised by your message," Jess replied, her tone assertive, despite the racing pulse she felt in her throat. "What's on your mind?" Tom shifted in his seat, visibly torn between weighing his words and the importance of their content. "I know we've had a rocky past, but I think we need to revisit our project. I should have never let it drop." He trailed off, collecting his thoughts. Jess's heart raced at the mention of the project. Was this the moment to reclaim her ambitions? The threads of her aspirations weaved intricately through that past, yet she had to remain vigilant. "I'm all ears," she encouraged, but she felt a sudden surge of caution. "But I'm also committed to my own direction now. I need to know that I'll have creative freedom." Tom's eyes widened, perhaps realizing the shift in her tone. "I respect that. Honestly, I do, but this isn't just about the project anymore. It's bigger than both of us." His earnestness was disarming. Still, something in his posture hinted at the unsaid. "Bigger how?" She leaned in, curiosity piqued but guarded. He took a deep breath. "I've been working on my own development too. After our last collaboration fell apart, it prompted me to really examine what I want, my goals, and my approach to partnerships." There was weight behind his admission, a shared recognition of their faltering connection that birthed new possibilities. Jess couldn't silence the echo of memories that flashed through her mind, failures, misunderstandings, and moments swathed in tension. Yet here they were, two people at a crossroads. Would this conversation aim for reconciliation, or merely circle back to the past's echoes? "Are you suggesting we work together again?" The question hung between them, flaring uncertainty, but also an ember of potential. "I think we could create something impactful," he offered. Jess felt a swell of ambition blending with caution. Trust would not be easily bestowed, yet she sensed a flicker of opportunity glittering in the murky waters. The idea of rekindling their collaboration, bolstered by their mutual growth, was tantalizing. But would that path reflect her voice, her direction? "I'll consider it," she replied cautiously, feeling the need to keep her independence intact. "But I want clear boundaries this time, and I'll need assurance of creative autonomy." Tom nodded, understanding flowing through his expression. "I can do that," he assured her, "but we have to be honest about our strengths and weaknesses, no more ignoring what's real." A sudden resolve blossomed within Jess. This was a chance not merely for career advancement, but a step toward establishing her narrative, one where she could assert her agency. But her instincts warned her to tread lightly. These kinds of partnerships often blurred lines. "Okay," she said, determination lacing her voice. "Let's outline a framework for this so we both feel comfortable. But if I've learned anything, it's that true growth comes from honest dialogues, not just agreements. As their conversation deepened into the intricacies of what a new partnership might entail, Jess sensed a pivotal shift, both professionally and personally. A clear path ahead was beginning to emerge, one that intertwined desirable growth with genuine connections. But was she ready to fully commit? Doubt still lingered, shadows veiling her clearer vision. As Tom spoke, sparking ideas in her mind, Jess couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of a much larger transformation, one that would challenge her more than she bargained for. The question remained, would she rise to meet this new challenge, or would the balance of collaboration prove too daunting? The stakes felt higher than ever. Jess felt invigorated as she and Tom laid the groundwork for their collaboration, the air thick with promise and potential discovery. As the conversation unfolded, ideas flowed freely. Jess could feel her confidence building. This moment was her acknowledgment of self-worth, a departure from the shadows cast by her past. "Let's start by outlining our individual goals and perspectives," she suggested, her voice steady. In that moment, she clearly recognized her voice as a powerful tool, something she had previously let others dilute. Each word she spoke was laden with intention. She had a purpose now, a renewed sense of agency that shielded her from past vulnerabilities. Tom nodded, responsiveness sparking in his gaze, enhancing her sense of competence. "Absolutely. I think establishing what we both want out of this is crucial. I want our collaboration to reflect our individual strengths, not our previous disconnect." The sincerity in his tone was refreshing, validating her growth, acknowledging the lessons learned through their past challenges. They began listing their objectives on paper, creating a tangible framework that reinforced Jess's newfound resolve. For once, she was holding the reins. This wasn't merely about reigniting an old project. It was about crafting a partnership based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. "Transparency and trust are key," Jess affirmed, and she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Each word marked a step towards her personal and professional metamorphosis. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, she was a creator, an architect of her narrative, ensuring her voice was woven throughout their collective effort. After fluid discussions on initial concepts, they transitioned into the practical, deciding on timelines and checkpoints. Jess impressed herself with her assertiveness, noticing how naturally it all flowed. This was no longer a fleeting drive to escape her mundane life. She was carving her place into a framework that reflected her aspirations. "What about feedback loops?" Tom suggested, genuinely interested. "We should ensure that we both feel comfortable giving and receiving constructive criticism." The idea resonated deeply within her, a reminder that her ascent would be powered by authentic collaboration rather than the reticent silence that had colored their last endeavor. "I agree. Regular check-ins will help us stay aligned and make adjustments as needed. I want this to be an evolving process, not static." Jess felt empowered, reiterating her priorities, molding the framework into something that encapsulated her essence. As they worked through the details, Jess felt something shift within her. This wasn't just a collaboration, it was an exploration of her identity, an affirmation of everything she had battled to reclaim. She was standing at the intersection of her past and her future, wielding her voice as both a weapon and a shield. By the time they wrapped up, Jess was filled with excitement and anticipation. She could almost taste the thrill of what lay ahead. What was once an elusive dream was now solidified in action, her ambitions morphing into a concrete plan. "Thanks for reaching out, Jess. I really believe we can create something profound this time," Tom said, heeding her efforts. The sincerity in his acknowledgment reverberated through her. This was not the man who had undermined her. This was a partner who recognized her potential. "Let's make it count," Jess replied, her heart swelling with a blend of gratitude and pride. At that moment she realized she had transformed not only her professional circumstances, but her fundamental understanding of herself. She was no longer shackled to self-doubt. She was driving her narrative. As she exited the cafe, the world pulsed with possibility. The cool air filled her lungs, invigorating her spirit even further. Jess caught her reflection in the cafe window, a woman who embodied confidence, clarity, and newfound purpose. She had conquered a cycle of past limitations and was boldly stepping into her potential. Now, with the ink dried on her aspirations, she was preparing to welcome the adventure that lay ahead. Inspired and equipped to explore her identity through writing, she envisioned piecing together her experiences, not only to share her story, but to connect with others facing similar struggles. This time it was different. She had established her foundation on a renewed sense of self, allowing her to flourish beyond the confines of her previous existence. Each connection, each word, shaped her narrative, and Jess held the pen. The urgency to share her journey thrummed within her as Jess reached for her phone again. This was her moment of clarity, a call to action, not only for herself, but for those who had walked similar paths. She felt propelled to articulate her story, to empower others who had once felt invisible. "Here's to the stories waiting to be told," Jess whispered to herself, determination surging through her veins. She was ready to take the leap of faith into uncharted territory, beckoning her unique essence to emerge, fearlessly, unapologetically, significantly. Now was the time to unleash her voice, to soar into the realms of her ambitions, where the audience awaited. And as she looked up at the vast horizon stretched before her, Jess smiled, knowing she was stepping towards something extraordinary. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.